The story begins with the protagonist recalling his father's words, "Live for the clan." On a battlefield, blood dripping from his face, he knelt while knights observed. His father's words meant he should desire nothing and remain by his brother's side like a shadow. Surrounded by fallen knights, Cyan Vert faced a commander, Boris, and several soldiers. Boris smugly addressed him by name. In response, Cyan drew his sword from thin air, asking Boris who was behind this. Was it the Emperor? A dark aura surrounded Cyan as Boris shielded himself and remarked on the sickening fog. Seeing Cyan's power confirmed the rumors. Boris called him an assassin from Mist, an organization akin to the Knights of Light's enemy. Boris planned to report that he had eliminated an impure heathen ally. Cyan warned Boris that he wouldn't have a single tooth left after their battle. Boris taunted him, saying the 9-star magic barrier around the area made his efforts futile. Despite this, Cyan resolved to break through the barrier, knowing he needed to expose the real culprit to his brother. Suddenly, a commanding voice ordered Cyan to stop. A man in golden armor with blonde hair arrived, someone Cyan recognized with confusion. He recalled his father's words, "Live for the clan," and how Yahello Vert, his brother, was the clan's extension. Realization struck, Yahello was the mastermind. Cyan's legs weakened as Yahello calmly acknowledged his confusion. Yahello praised Cyan for serving the clan and people but revealed that he was removing the burden from his brother. When Cyan asked what he had done wrong, Yahello pointed to the ominous fog surrounding him, calling him a murderer and questioning his humanity. The words murderer and sin echoed in Cyan's mind, fueling his rage. Cyan recalled helping Yahello through succession battles and demon raids, dedicating 20 years to his brother's success. Overwhelmed with betrayal, he punched the ground angrily and stood up, his dark aura intensifying. Blood pooled at his feet, but he was ready to give everything, even if it meant destroying Yahello. Cyan's crimson mist engulfed the area, painting the sky red. The knights were shocked by his remaining mana, inhumanly vast. Cyan accused Yahello of trying to kill him out of fear, asking if he felt no shame. Yahello's fury showed, veins bulging on his face. Cyan launched at him with incredible speed, relentlessly attacking as Yahello deflected with his sword. Cyan needed one chance, just one, to pierce Yahello's weak point and stop his regeneration. But his strongest attack was blocked by a magic barrier aided by Boris. Yahello stabbed Cyan in the stomach, calling him a poor bastard and dropping his dagger. Yahello revealed that he had known Cyan was untrustworthy and had never trusted him. Heartbroken, Cyan was kicked aside and left bleeding on the ground. Blood pooled under him as he reflected on his foolish life, calling himself stupid. Suddenly, Cyan chased after Yahello, screaming as he unleashed all his power. His dagger neared Yahello's throat but was stopped by a powerful force that blew him away. He lost consciousness. Then, he heard someone calling, "Young Master Cyan." He woke up sweating and gasping. A maid scolded him for oversleeping and told him to get ready. Surprised, he saw Emily and asked what she was doing there. Emily was surprised to see Cyan, realizing it had been 20 years since they last met, yet she looked unchanged. Cyan noticed the familiar surroundings and realized he was in the room he used to live in as a child. He wondered if he had somehow returned to his younger self. Emily called his attention, asking if he was stalling to avoid training. She urged him to make up his mind and go. Confused, the young Cyan asked about the training she referred to. Looking around, Cyan realized he was back in the Vert clan's Duke. He wondered if his life was flashing before his eyes. His mind wandered back to when he was about to enter the academy 27 years ago, in the year 985. The Duke family held an annual duel training session attended by Duke Vert. Cyan's opponent was his half-brother, Krantz Vert, who had received more attention due to his mother's status as the Duke's wife. Despite being the younger son, Cyan was considered a bastard and became the laughingstock of the event. His father had stopped paying attention to him after that duel. Emily whispered for Cyan to surrender, but he assured her he could win. He felt the weight of his rapier and realized his strength was the same as when he was young. It wasn't a dream or illusion. He was back in the past. Krantz mocked him for staying in the duel, and Cyan saw this as his chance to change the future. He looked to his father, who declared the match to begin. Krantz attacked first, confident he'd land a blow, but Cyan easily dodged and disarmed him. He kicked Krantz in the shin, making him fall in pain. His mother, Margaret Argius, yelled in concern. Cyan thought about ending it right there, but instead, he gripped his sword tighter, remembering all the times Krantz had bullied him. This time, he vowed to ensure Krantz would never torment him again. Cyan's victory in the duel earned him the Duke's attention. In the hallway, he encountered Margaret, who seemed flustered. Cyan smirked and asked if Krantz was okay. Margaret lashed out, calling him audacious and insulting him and his mother. She claimed bastards like him didn't deserve to be treated like legitimate children. Cyan's anger boiled over. She had crossed the line. He had considered killing her but stopped, grinning. He knew how to make her suffer slowly. He asked if she knew he would be attending the academy. When she asked what he meant, he replied, "I'm sure you want your son to graduate in one piece, right? Guess you're not worried about him, huh, Duchess?" Her anger flared and she moved to slap him, calling him vulgar, but Jurkin stepped in to protect him. Jurkin apologized to the Duchess, explaining that the Duke had called for him urgently. With a stern expression he told the Duchess they had to leave. She stayed silent, her husband's orders were final. Cyan peeked from behind Jurkin, laughing. He was protected by a knight who wouldn't bow to the Duchess. San thought Jurkin was both kind and reliable. The door opened and the Duke motioned them in. Canon entered, greeting him. It had been almost 15 years since they had met alone. Duke Wyliersvert, the great feudal lord of Valias in the Wuzif Empire, known as the Guardian of the Continent, had stopped the demon invasion with his magic and wisdom, fighting to the death against the Demon King's army. Cyan remembered him differently, as a man who, despite his heroism, had foolishly spent his life serving others. The Duke noted how Cyan had skillfully dodged the sword, explaining that it had been instinct. He asked when Cyan had learned swordsmanship. Cyan thought the Duke was as sharp as ever. He admitted he hadn't learned swordsmanship but had practiced alone every night. The Duke pressed, knowing Cyan had never shown interest in swords before. He asked why Cyan had hidden such skills. Embarrassed, Cyan said he didn't want attention, but the Duke wasn't convinced. Despite his reasoning, Cyan had gone all out against Krantz. The Duke continued, asking if Cyan thought his actions afterward, kicking Krantz while he was down, had been unnecessary. Cyan felt the Duke was probing, trying to gauge his true abilities. Cyan confessed he had wanted to prove himself. The Duke asked what he wanted to prove and Cyan confidently replied that he wanted to prove he was better than Krantz despite sharing the same blood. He said that had been the point of the duel. The Duke laughed, praising Cyan's clarity and level-headedness. He hadn't realized how talented Cyan was and was pleased by the revelation. He told Cyan he would one day become an excellent support for Ashel. Cyan felt betrayed. Confused and disappointed, he wondered why he was expected to help Ashel. The Duke was still obsessed with Ashel. Cyan's fist clenched. The Duke offered a reward, asking if there was anything Cyan wanted. With sharp eyes, Cyan decided to destroy everything Ashel tried to achieve. He told the Duke what he wanted. Moments later, Emily turned pale when she learned Cyan wanted to enter the battlefront. He reassured her that nothing was certain yet, but she pressed him, asking if he had lost his mind or understood what kind of place it was. She warned him it was filled with terrifying demonic beasts. The battlefront, in the western feud of the Wuzif Empire, was known for its brutal demon battles. The Limia Valley was the front line, a battlefield where demons had fought for centuries. The Duke, who had opposed it, gave Cyan a condition: he must become worthy of entering the Limia Valley within a month. Cyan wasn't sure how the Duke would judge his worth but decided to focus on improving his physical strength in the limited time. He knew he was weaker than his peers but felt lucky to retain his combat instincts from before his regression and some magic. With proper training, he believed he could make good use of his abilities. Determined, he began his training. Suddenly, the door burst open and a woman entered. It was Ellis, with blue hair and a stern expression. She grabbed him by the collar. Emily greeted her but Ellis shook Cyan, demanding to know if he had gone mad. Ellis had heard that Cyan had asked their father to send him to the battlefront. Cyan turned pale and begged Ellis to let him go. She released him and he collapsed to the ground. Ellis remarked that defeating Krantz had clearly gone to his head and ordered him to the rooftop immediately. Ellis gave Cyan an ultimatum on the rooftop: if he could endure her attacks for 3 minutes after drawing his sword, she would allow him to go. RMC questioned if Ellis needed to go that far but Ellis was firm. She then asked if Cyan was after the family title. Cyan was surprised by her assumption: he had no interest in the title. Ellis assumed his silence meant yes and ordered him to draw his sword. He was exasperated. It hadn't even been half a day since his duel with Krantz and now his day was already chaotic. Ellis attacked and though he hadn't expected it, Cyan blocked her strike. Ellis was surprised: he was only 10 and that block seemed impossible. He wondered if Ellis would go all out against her 7-year younger brother. Ellis stepped back, processing what had happened. Despite her rapier's lightness, Cyan had parried her longsword's attack cleanly. She wondered if he had just gotten lucky. Ellis acknowledged that Cyan had better instincts than she had thought. Cyan saw her expression and knew things were about to get serious. She launched a full-on attack but Cyan blocked her sword with his rapier and expertly slid his blade parallel to her throat. Ellis had been taken aback, leaving Cyan struggling to regain his stance. He shifted his sword but Ellis blasted him away. He landed on top of a pillar, breathing heavily. He reflected on how the situation could have gone wrong. Had he not twisted his sword midway, he would have killed her. Mist swordsmanship was designed for immediate kills, and Cyan admitted it had been difficult to fight without that ability, especially since his strength was lacking. He wondered how much time he had left. He had been imbuing his sword with his mana to compensate for his weak strength, but he was nearly at his limit. Ellis, too, was breathing heavily. She called upon Earth and Wine to act as her sword. Cyan was surprised to see sixth-star magic in action. Ellis's blade glowed blue, forming the aqua blade, its shape bearing a strange, crying expression. Cyan wondered if Ellis was trying to kill him. Ellis muttered that she couldn't lose. Cyan could tell by the look in her eyes that this would be the end for him, especially with him positioned on the edge. He anticipated falling, even if he blocked her attack. He decided to trust that his plan would work and charged at her with incredible speed. As Ellis pointed her sword toward the sky to concentrate her power, Cyan gripped his sword tightly, silently hoping for Jurkin to intervene. Ellis was brimming with power. Cyan desperately wished for Jurkin to appear. Just as they were about to collide, Jurkin suddenly appeared, screaming, "Stop!" He blocked Ellis's sword with his own while grabbing Cyan by the back of his neck. The impact of Ellis's attack caused a massive explosion. With a serious expression, Jurkin addressed Lady Ellis, telling her she was being too harsh on a much younger opponent. Cyan, still dangling from Jurkin's hand, sighed in relief. He continued to wonder when Jurkin would appear. As if coming out of a trance, he gasped and immediately hugged her brother, apologizing. She admitted that she had briefly lost her mind and began crying. Snot dripped from her nose as she expressed how much she wanted to stop him from going to the battlefield. Cyan smiled, thinking how typical it was of Ellis to act this way, always trying so hard with everything. Ellis had been an elite at the Royal Academy, excelling in swordsmanship, magic and more. Known as God's Child, she was seen as the continent's future guardian alongside Yahello. But after joining the Knights of Light, she had been gravely injured. Cyan, holding her tightly, silently vowed to protect her this time. Ellis asked Jurkin if he was the Duke's guardian knight, confused since the Duke had just gone to war. Jurkin explained that he was secretly following orders to protect the young master. Cyan wondered why his father had ordered this and nearly fell asleep, with Ellis teasing him for still being a kid. The next day, Ellis returned briefly before her graduation. Cyan, frustrated by his weak training, could only manage 10 push-ups. Then Emily knocked, bringing a package. Inside was Hellhound's blood, a rare substance that increased strength and mana. Though dangerous, Cyan knew it worked from his past life. Emily questioned whether he would drink it and he downed it, feeling power surge through him immediately. Telling Emily that he was going for a walk, Cyan stepped outside to test his newfound strength. He headed to a mountain overlooking the Dush, a place he hadn't visited. It had been 2 weeks since Jurkin's regular reports had been absent and he often came here when he needed to be alone. Then, Cyan recalled a divine revelation Yahello had received from the god of light, Lumendal. Yahello had been told of an ancient temple hidden somewhere in these mountains. Cyan had been skeptical at first, but the concentration of mana in the area felt undeniable. Only he knew about it for now and he relished the secret. He placed his hand on the ground and a power surge traveled through the earth. A grin spread across his face as he thought about how clueless Yahello was about his current activities. The ground cracked, revealing an underground passage. With a sense of purpose, Cyan went inside, eager to explore whatever secrets lay hidden beneath the surface. He noticed that the place was different from last time. It had been an ancient temple, once dedicated to the god of light, Lumendal, until its history was erased by the demon war 300 years ago. Who would have thought the temple had been hidden in the mountains behind the castle? A glowing sword stood on a pedestal, a relic from 9939 before the foundation. Humanity defeated the Demon King's army in Valias thanks to ancient relics called God's weaponry. One of those relics, Duran Dark, a holy sword blessed by Lumendal, had been crucial to the victory. Cyan would eventually meet his end because of that sword which Yahello possessed. He wondered if Duran Dark had something to do with his regression. He touched the sword but nothing happened. Frustrated, he kicked it and muttered, "Holy sword, my ass." He decided to move on, unaware that the sword was also annoyed. A shadow appeared as he walked past the light, not a sword's shadow but something darker. Imbuing it with power, he revealed a hidden path leading to another room. Inside, Cyan found his sword glowing red on a pedestal. He greeted it, saying, "Nice to see you." He grabbed Kram, the demonic sword he had wielded before his death. The moment he touched it, a powerful, ominous aura surrounded him. "Good morning, Kram," he said, but there was no response. Wondering if it was still dormant, he felt elated nonetheless. The familiar feeling urged him to slay something right then. A shadow with sharp eyes appeared, asking if he had no fear. Kram asked if Cyan knew what it meant to have awakened her. Cyan nonchalantly replied that it probably meant the sword was his now. The shadow grew more menacing, warning Cyan that it was too late to regret awakening a demonic sword. It grinned, revealing sharp teeth, and rushed at him, claiming his body would be its. But Kram was shocked when Cyan casually choked her. He told her he wasn't weak before the shadow faded, revealing a human face. Kram wondered how he could touch her. Cyan reiterated that the sword was his. Kram, now with long pink nails, attacked Cyan, screaming, F***ck off. Losing his grip, he watched as she leaped backward. When fully revealed, Kram turned out to be a woman. She demanded to know who Cyan was, sensing a dark aura around him. She asked if he was the successor and why he carried a ruse aura. Cyan grinned devilishly and confirmed he was a ruse successor. He declared that her master was back and demanded she bow to him, calling her demonic sword Kram. Kram rejected him, saying he was just a kid and unworthy. They fought, and Cyan quickly realized that words wouldn't be enough. The demonic sword's ultimate goal was to possess its user, leaving him no choice but to act. Though he had planned to go easy on her, Cyan grinned and activated his demonic sword control. Suddenly, Kram was pulled to the ground, groaning from the impact. Cyan told her he'd say it once. Why wouldn't she accept him as her master while he was still being merciful? Kram gritted her teeth and demanded to know how he could use such power. Cyan activated demonic sword control again, smashing Kram's face into the ground repeatedly until her head was buried deep. He asked if she was ready to accept him now. Kram replied that she received it but still called him human. Just as Cyan prepared to activate his control again, Kram corrected herself, calling him master. With his business in that place finished, Cyan wondered if it was time to return, having been gone for too long. In sword form, Kram expressed how refreshing it felt to breathe fresh air again. She emerged from the sword, forming a black balloon with eyes, a mouth, and pink hair. She happily commented on the feeling. Kram then asked for her master's name. Cyan gave his full name and Kram said she had never heard it. She asked again if Aru had indeed chosen someone like him. Cyan replied, yeah, in my past life. This confused Kram. He explained that he had died once before. Kram thought, what the hell? Then, she noticed the other sword in front of them. She remarked that it was still sleeping, and Cyan mentioned it would have to wait 20 years for its owner. Kram noted how Cyan spoke as if he knew the future. Grabbing his sword, Cyan assumed a stance and, out of nowhere, cut the sword's handle in front of them. Kram was surprised and asked what he planned to do with it. Cyan grinned devilishly, saying it could make things more interesting. The setting sun cast a warm glow as the carriage moved away from the castle. It slowed to a stop, and Cyan, wearing a shield on his chest, couldn't believe the day had come so quickly and time had flown by. He greeted the Duke upon his arrival, and the Duke asked if Cyan was still determined to go to the battlefront. He said this would be the last time he would ask, and assured Cyan that he wouldn't stop him if he wanted to back out. With confidence, Cyan declared that his heart was already set on the battlefront. The Duke then instructed him to open what he had, and Jurkin revealed a magic scroll. Cyan recognized it immediately. It was a summoning scroll. Jurkin released it and a creature with flames on its body appeared. It was a hellhound, a low-ranked demonic beast from the Lamia Valley. Cyan thought his father and the knights must have gone through a lot to prepare for this test. The knights placed their hands on their swords, ready for action. Cyan observed them, noting their preparedness to step in if the situation became dangerous. The Duke told him he was responsible for his actions and urged him to prove his resolve by passing the trial and showing them his strength. Jurkin thought about the trial, his grip tightening on his sword. He remembered the time Cyan had invited him for a duel. Back then, Cyan had explained there were only 3 days left until the deadline for his promise to his father. He couldn't just keep swinging his sword aimlessly and wanted to experience a real fight. He asked Jurkin to help him, though he had been hesitant, and suggested that Cyan duel someone closer to his age, like young Master Krantz. Cyan explained that, for some reason, Krantz always ran away when he saw him. Jurkin, annoyed, had finally agreed. He informed Cyan that he would only fight with his sword's sheath and focus on defense, encouraging Cyan to attack him as much as he wanted. Cyan thanked Jurkin for his help and asked him for one more favor. The atmosphere shifted, and with a serious expression, Cyan told him that no matter what happened in the duel, he must not tell the Duke about it. He emphasized that it was an order, which left Jurkin puzzled. Cyan attacked and Jurkin blocked it with his sword, surprised by the weight of the blow. He couldn't believe such strength came from a 10-year-old. Before he could get back into stance, Cyan attacked again. Jurkin was stunned by how fast Cyan moved and quickly realized he had lost sight of him. He sensed C behind him just in time to defend. He attacked him relentlessly. Cyan gave his all in the duel, but Jurkin deflected every strike. He admitted he couldn't win against him yet and thanked Jurkin for his hard work. Jurkin, breathing heavily, praised the young master in his mind. He couldn't believe how much Cyan had grown since his weaker days. He is confident that the young master can overcome the trial. The hellhound moved swiftly and Cyan anticipated its attack. It roared as it charged toward him, its eyes fixed on him. It passed and Cyan realized that fighting such a monster with his current strength was still too much. He knew he had to end the battle quickly. The hellhound readied for another attack, but he had already planned to finish it. He took a combat stance and aimed for its neck as the hellhound charged. With a mighty leap, he pierced its skull with his sword. The knights were stunned and the duke looked pleased. Cyan glanced at the hellhound's corpse, noting how much blood was spilling from its neck. It seemed wasteful, but he knew that acting on it would make him seem insane. The duke clapped and praised Cyan, telling him, "Then I'll see you at the battlefront." Cyan thanked his father. Kram appeared as a small cloud of smoke on his shoulder, her voice sharp and fierce. "Do I look like a kitchen knife to you?" she demanded. Cyan, still nonchalant, replied, "Of course not, you're a demonic sword." "Why would you say that?" Kiram's frustration grew. "Then use me, damn it," she yelled. She eyed the corpse of the hellhound and stuck out her tongue. "I need blood to get stronger. Let me have just one gulp." Cyan's gaze darkened with murderous intent. "Don't worry," he said coolly. "Soon, I'll use you to my heart's content. Look forward to it." Kram grumbled under her breath. "You should have just woken me up back then," she muttered, annoyed. An ogre had appeared in the northwest and the duke had ordered the knights to set up a defense and eliminate it, leaving no survivors. The knights had activated the restraint of salvation, a bright yellow mark glowing in the air. A magic circle had appeared beneath the ogres, immobilizing them with restraints. The duke had commanded the knights to attack and they had swiftly cut down the ogres despite their roars. Cyan, mounted on a horse, had watched while Emily, behind him, had cried in fear. She had asked why he had come to such a dangerous place. Cyan had felt nostalgic, and when the duke had asked about being on the front lines, he had admitted to feeling nervous. The duke had warned him never to let his guard down, as death could come unexpectedly. Cyan had nodded, understanding the constant danger of the front lines. There were typically 3 to 4 battles a day, each with a response plan. The knights, the core of the defense, had handled most of the monsters. Cyan's assigned team had been stationed at the rear, the safest area, but he had struggled to find a chance to feed Kram. As Emily had trembled under the blanket, she had reminded him that, as the duke had said, they never knew when or where they might die. Cyan had asked why Emily wouldn't return to camp. She had snapped, "Do you think I can leave when you can't do anything without me?" Annoyed, she had said that if she ran away, who would take care of him? She had told him to move since it was time to eat. Cyan had asked about the cape he'd requested, but Emily had left without replying. Holding back his frustration, Cyan wondered what would happen if he chased her away. That night, Cyan had placed a doll resembling him in bed, covered it with a blanket and made it look like he was sleeping. Still with her eyes closed, Emily had asked if he planned to exercise. He had confirmed and asked if he had woken her. She had praised his diligence, saying the duke would have been proud. Cyan had put on his hood and prepared to leave, briefing her that he was asleep before exiting the tent. Knowing the front lines had strict guard duties, Cyan had dashed, using his skill, Thick Fog 3, Move Fog's Descent. He had headed toward a monster-infested area, perfect for using Kram. She had been excited by the strong scent of blood and urged him to move quickly to kill something. Several hellhounds had attacked and Cyan had agreed to let Kram enjoy herself. They had swiftly defeated the monsters, with Cyan using Fog Sword, rushing Fog Storm to mow down more. Afterward, he drained blood from the corpses into a tube, drinking it directly from a mug. He had looked mad as he muttered, "This is the stuff," while Kram, exhilarated, had agreed it was the best she had felt since waking up. Cyan had told Kram they would keep training, but she had questioned how long it would take to get stronger by killing hellhounds. Unbeknownst to them, several more hellhounds had gathered behind them. Sensing the danger, Cyan had reassured Kram that the night was still young and there were plenty of monsters to hunt. Kram had been excited, eager to face ogres, hellhounds, and giant crocodiles. Meanwhile, a carriage escorted by knights had traveled through the mountains. Inside, a silver-haired girl had sat and someone had mentioned the front lines were too dangerous. The girl, annoyed, had reminded them she was the royal princess and bound to assist her father on his tour. She had warned the attendant not to mention it again. The attendant had shifted the topic, mentioning that Duke Vert's youngest son had been on the front lines, around the same age as the princess. Surprised, the princess had learned the boy had volunteered. The attendant had suggested the two should get along, but the princess had feigned disinterest and decided to sleep. A few moments later, she had asked the boy's name. When told it was Cyan Vert, she had mentally noted it. The princess's face had been revealed. A monster had been slain and the duke had ordered a check for injuries. It was reported that everyone was fine. The Duke praised their efforts and told them to return. He then noticed Cyan, who had killed the last flying monster. The Duke asked how Cyan was adjusting to the front lines. Cyan respectfully replied that he was learning something new every day. The Duke, expecting Cyan to want to leave, remarked that his son had endured well and expressed pride in him, which surprised Cyan. Before leaving, the Duke requested that Cyan meet him in his tent early the following day. His father's kindness took aback Cyan. That night, a deathworm emerged from the ground. Cyan narrowly escaped, but the massive creature, with sharp teeth along its body, was a deadly foe. It usually appeared deeper in the valley. Sensing Cyan's struggle, Kram offered to take over, but he was wary of her intentions. Kram promised to use it briefly, allowing him to take over afterward. Cyan pointed out that the deathworm's regenerative ability made shallow attacks pointless. Cyan agreed, realizing they might be stuck in an endless battle if they continued. A month had passed since Cyan went to the front lines. He had drunk the blood of countless demonic beasts but still felt it wasn't enough. When a deathworm attacked, Cyan reluctantly decided to go along with whatever Kram had planned. Kram activated Thick Fog 9th form, demonic sword manifestation, eager to unleash her power. She sliced through the deathworm's thick skin with one swift movement. Using Fog Sword 8, fluttering petals, she moved swiftly, cutting the deathworm to pieces, its blood spilling everywhere. Meanwhile, the Duke's party examined the corpse of a monster, noting its fresh kill and imposing mana. Jurkin suspected a demon had been involved. The Duke agreed and instructed them to inspect the area and burn the corpse. Upon closer inspection, the Duke noticed familiar sword traces, sensing a sense of déjà vu. He called him to investigate further. They found the corpse of a deathworm. The Duke was intrigued, wondering who could have slain such a creature. The slain deathworm was the same one Cyan had killed, and the Duke suspected that an organization he knew might be behind it. Kiram's demonic sword manifestation allowed her to take control of Cyan's body and use her true powers. However, if Cyan let his guard down, she could completely take over. Cyan knew this, so he thought letting Kram take down even one monster was reckless. Afterward, he woke up sore, thankful for the demonic beast blood he had drunk, as his body would have broken down a month ago. Kram announced that she understood everything now, remarking that Cyan's appearance might have been that of a child, but he didn't act like one. She knowledge of Lemia Valley and his sword techniques, which suggested decades of training. Noticed his expert handling of her, his knowledge of Lemia Valley and his sword techniques, which suggested decades of training. Cyan revealed that he had already died once, confirming Kiram's suspicion. He was a regressor. Cyan looked at her as if she were a fool. He asked if it wasn't obvious when he told her he'd already died. He thought he'd made it clear enough. Kram was stunned and then angry, yelling that he hadn't explained anything. Cyan shrugged, saying he was too lazy for that. Kram changed the subject, commenting that killing Cyan must have been tough. She had a few theories, such as him being destroyed by the owner of the Duran Dark. She guessed betrayal, given how he had looked at the holy sword like trash. She figured his goal had been revenge and warned that she'd swallow him up if he faltered. He smacked her head, reminding her to know her place. Kram was left dizzy on the ground. In his head, Cyan noted that she hadn't changed, like in his previous life. He left the tent, confused by the chaos outside. Emily rushed over, reporting that high-level monsters were near the valley entrance. Cyan grew tense, thinking she might mean the deathworm. Emily added that it had been years since any high-level monster had been seen near the camps. He asked if she knew anything else, like sightings of a suspicious person, but before she could respond, Oken called for him. The Duke wanted to see him right away. Cyan sighed, irritated. His quiet life before entering the academy was slipping away. He couldn't handle the corpses last night because soldiers had shown up out of nowhere. He headed to the Duke's tent, expecting his father to know he'd killed the monsters. The Duke acknowledged his presence and Cyan braced for a difficult conversation, trying to think of an excuse. The Duke got straight to the point, asking Cyan what he had been doing the previous night. Cyan replied that he had gone to bed early because he had been tired. The Duke found this suspicious as the sword traces reminded him of Cyan's technique. However, he dismissed the thought, reasoning that someone as young as Cyan couldn't have slain a deathworm. Cyan, noticing his father was distracted, called his attention. The Duke assumed Cyan already knew what had happened but decided to investigate further, suspecting a secret organization called Mist. Cyan feigned ignorance, pretending it was his first time hearing of Mist. The Duke explained that Mist was an ancient organization infamous for assassinating nobles under the guise of purification, always leaving a black fog behind. They had disappeared a century ago, yet the deathworm's corpse from the previous night was shrouded in the same fog. The black fog, the god of darkness worshipped by Mist, convinced the Duke that Mist had returned and killed the deathworm and other beasts. Deep down, Cyan marveled at his father's deduction, even though Mist hadn't been seen for centuries. The Duke admitted he had no answers about Mist's reappearance but advised Cyan to be cautious. He planned to notify the Empire and investigate further, believing Cyan had no connection to Mist. The Duke then shifted topics, asking if Cyan knew who was visiting. Cyan mentioned he had heard about His Majesty's visit but hadn't known it was that day. The Duke asked Cyan for a favor, making him slightly nervous. The horn blew, followed by the announcement of His Majesty's arrival. All the knights, including the Duke, knelt in respect. The Emperor enthusiastically called the Duke by his first name, descended from his horse, tapped the Duke on the shoulder and told him to rise, reminding him they were old friends. The Emperors fell on Cyan and he greeted him indifferently. Cyan introduced himself and the Emperor remarked that living in such an environment at his age showed how exceptional the Duke's children were. Cyan's goofy expression surfaced as he remembered the favor the Duke had asked, the simple task of presenting himself as the Duke's son. In his past life, Cyan had always stayed indoors during the Emperor's visits, making this moment a touching sign of his father's trust. The Emperor then introduced someone, a young lady who stepped out of the carriage, introducing herself as Aaron Sevelis, the fifth princess of the Wuzif Empire. Cyan recognized her as the tragic fifth princess from his past life. Earlier, the Duke had asked him to escort Princess Aaron for the day. At first, Cyan didn't know how to respond but the Duke reassured him that he only needed to keep her company. The Duke noted that Aaron was the same age as Cyan and mentioned they'd likely meet often at the academy. Cyan recalled briefly seeing her during classes in his past life. The Duke encouraged him to build rapport with her, suggesting no harm in befriending royalty. Though reluctant, Cyan understood his father's hope for them to form a bond, similar to the friendship the Duke shared with the Emperor. Cyan thought the Duke had chosen the wrong person for that task. He couldn't see Princess Aaron as a potential friend. Although he knew the future and couldn't share it, he found the situation annoying but decided to comply. His attention shifted when the princess began speaking. The princess asked why the river was red. Cyan confirmed she meant the Blood River and explained it flowed through the entire Limia Valley. The red water came from old or injured demonic beasts instinctively jumping in when they could no longer survive. Their decomposing bodies and fluids, broken down by mana, turned the water red. The princess's shocked, goofy expression amused Cyan as he casually added that demonic beasts drank and washed in the river. He warned her not to go near it, calling it disgusting. The princess, looking horrified, asked what lay at the river's end. Cyan replied that it led to the demon realm. When she nervously asked if demons lived there, Cyan couldn't resist teasing her with a devilish grin. He joked that she might meet the Demon King if she followed the river. The princess's horrified reaction entertained him, though he knew no one in their right mind would do such a thing. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, capturing everyone's attention. The princess asked what it was and Cyan explained it was the 3D sentry post in the west. The yellow light signified the approach of demonic beasts, shocking the princess even further. The Duke ordered the Guardian Knight Division to the 3rd sentry post to protect the Emperor. The Emperor dismissed the need for extra caution, unsheathing his sword to show his boredom. Reluctantly, the Duke agreed. The Emperor then declared his knights would join the demonic beast raid and focus on eliminating the beasts. The Duke assigned Cyan to the raid which Cyan agreed to. The princess asked if Cyan could fight the beasts and he assured her he would support her from the back. He urged her to return to safety but she insisted on joining. Cyan, frustrated, told her battles weren't playgrounds and warned that people died in them. She refused to back down. Cyan called Jurkin, who offered to escort the princess to safety. The annoyed princess called Cyan impudent for treating her as a princess that way. Cyan sternly warned her that her stubbornness could cost lives and asked if she could take responsibility for it. Tearful, she hesitated but Cyan turned to leave, telling her to go back if she would cry. With the princess and her maid standing behind, the knights continued their mission. A giant slime, having devoured several humans, loomed ahead. The Duke ordered the knights to halt, reform and protect the Emperor, slaying all the monsters. Energized, the knights charged forward. Dion Sevelis, the Emperor of the Wuzif Empire, had 2 wives. Diana Quizzle, his first wife, was deceased, while Cassandra Nephilis, his second, was the Empire's prominent judiciary. Diana had given birth to the first and second princesses and Cassandra had given birth to the third and fourth princes. Aaron Sevelis, the 5th princess, was born to a peasant mistress and branded a bastard. Despite being mocked for her mixed blood, Aaron focused on her royal duties and studies. However, she was framed for treason and cast out of the royal family and rumors spread that she had died alone from disease on an island, earning her the title of the Tragic Princess. Kram told Cyan that this mirrored what the Duke had said about his past life but Cyan noted that Aaron's struggles involved royal politics. Lightning struck a monster and Cyan remarked that the Emperor, skilled with holy lightning, was impressive. Dion, known for his star ranking in magic, could have led the Mage Association if he hadn't become Emperor. Cyan amusingly thought that an intermediate demonic beast was no challenge for him. After the brief battle, the Emperor commented on how long it had been since he shared a drink with his friend, though he felt lonely, as he was the only one drinking. The Duke apologized, explaining that he didn't drink at the front lines. The Emperor, reminded by the Duke's question about the Empire's atmosphere, shared concerns about recent noble assassinations causing anxiety. The Duke asked if there was a pattern. The Emperor confirmed that all the victims were corrupt nobles and black fog had been found at each crime scene. The Duke revealed traces at the battlefront, suggesting the Mist followers were involved. The Emperor agreed but asked the Duke to investigate further. He also expressed concern over rumors blaming Princess Erin for the chaos and asked the Duke to protect her if he died. Later, as rain poured, everyone was inside their tent, including Emily, who questioned if that was everything. Cyan replied, asking what more she expected. Emily scolded him, saying he'd never marry if he kept thinking that way. Unaware of someone outside his tent, Cyan assured her he'd train in the rain. Emily was surprised and asked who it was when a girl appeared. The girl removed her hood, revealing Princess Erin, who invited Cyan for a chat. Emily, excited, acted like a fangirl as they went inside the tent guarded by royal knights. Princess Erin asked how long Cyan had been there and he replied that it had been a month. She hesitated before asking if the maid could step outside, as she kept staring. Cyan told Emily to go out and her comment about them having fun confused them both. Cyan thought it was odd to have fun with a 10-year-old. Princess Erin apologized for her earlier behavior, admitting it had been unprincess-like. Cyan reassured her and apologized for being rude. She laughed, saying she would have done the same in his place. She mentioned how Cyan was more mature and well-liked than she was. Princess Erin then asked if he was attending the academy and offered friendship, but Cyan cut her off, saying he wouldn't help her. His response shook her. Annoyed, told her that if she just wanted friends, she should leave. Princess Erin, tears streaming, insisted that she wanted to be on good terms and asked if he also thought of her as a hollow princess. Cyan stayed silent. She then backed off, apologizing for wasting his time and admitting that she had been short-sighted to think they could at least talk. Princess Erin told Cyan he was completely different from Sir Rochelle, which struck a nerve in him and evoked strong feelings. He grabbed her arm and she yelled, "What's wrong with him?" With murderous eyes, Cyan asked how she knew his brother. She explained that she had met him during a Royal Academy tour last year where he had advised her to ignore others' opinions and fulfill her role as a princess. Cyan scoffed at the advice in his mind, knowing his brother's demonic personality better than anyone. He realized everything had started when his brother met Princess Erin, including the plan to bring her down. He warned her, but their conversation was interrupted by a loud noise. Emily ran into the tent and told him to run, but the roof had already caved in, followed by a loud impact from an attack. The knights cursed as a massive ogre swung its bat-like weapon inside. They rushed to check on the young master. Empty with worry, Emily saw the weapon lodged in the ground and cried out to the young master. The ogre's features were revealed. The scene shifted to the Emperor, who was surprised to receive a report about advanced-ranked demonic beasts ambushing the rear camps of the border regions, with the princess present. He immediately ordered the Imperial Army to secure her safety. The Emperor wondered who the princess was meeting there. Several ogres and deathworms were present and Cyan, RMC, was still alive, hiding behind debris. Emily, Princess Erin and the knights were also hiding behind rocks. Cyan assumed something had changed for these monsters to appear in the rear camp, wondering if it was because of him. Emily sobbed, thinking he was dead and promised never to leave his side again. The tent's roof had collapsed earlier and Cyan rushed to protect the princess. Cyan, recalling how he had killed the Demon King, wondered how he could die now from a mere ogre. Princess Erin was concerned about the knights, but Emily reassured her, blaming herself for putting them in danger. The knights reassured the princess that protecting her was their duty as the Empire's knights. The other knights reassured the princess, but those were the last words of one knight. Sensing danger, he yelled for everyone to move, but the ogre's hand was already reaching for him. It squeezed him until he coughed up blood. The princess was horrified, but Cyan immediately jumped before her, ordering her to move back. The ogre smiled, confirming Cyan's suspicion. It was after him. He told them to run with the princess while he distracted the beast. Emily eagerly agreed, leaving Kram dumbfounded. She grabbed the princess, asking the knight why he was standing there, which annoyed Cyan slightly. The ogre roared for Kram's attention and Cyan leapt high, slashing its arm. He wondered why these demonic beasts were so drawn to him. Kram laughed, explaining that his consumption of demonic beast blood had made him reek of it, which was why they targeted him. Cyan was annoyed that she hadn't told him sooner. Kram teased him, reminding him that she wanted his body. Cyan gripped her tightly, causing her to groan, before assuming a combat stance. Kram asked him to treat her better, but Cyan told her to shut up. He stood before the ogre, declaring he didn't care how many monsters came at him. Cyan attacked first, slicing the ogre's arm before it could strike. The ogre roared in pain and retaliated with another attack. But in the end, the ogre faced defeat. Sensing no one was watching, Cyan drank some advanced rank demonic beast blood. Kram eagerly awaited the feast, but Cyan was shocked when a purple claw from a devil dragon landed on the cliff. The dragon roared. Kram explained it was a baby and likely smelled him, but he focused on capturing it, activating demonic swordsman. Kram, now controlling his body, suggested eating the dragon instead. Meanwhile, the Emperor's lightning struck down the last ogres. He asked Williers if that was the last one. The Duke confirmed it, but the Emperor asked about the princess and his son. The Duke apologized, saying no traces had been found beyond the tent. The Emperor reassured him, emphasizing the princess's safety. A knight reported finding the princess. The Emperor grabbed her shoulder, asking if she was hurt. Princess Erin panicked and said they had to save Cyan. She cried, blaming herself. The Duke stood stiffly and the Emperor urged her to explain. The Duke approached Emily, asking if she was Cyan's maid and if something had happened to him. Emily trembled, stammering that Cyan had acted as bait to let them escape. The Duke's brow furrowed. A knight remembered his last location and requested permission to rescue Cyan. The Emperor told Williers to hurry. The Duke, looking menacing, insisted they couldn't prioritize rescuing Cyan. Princess Erin was shocked. The Emperor asked if he was serious. The Duke argued that the situation at the camps needed immediate attention to prevent the demonic beasts from invading the Empire. He stressed that reconstruction was the only way to save more lives. Emily, in tears, asked, "What about the young master?" The knight gritted his teeth. The Duke coldly replied that he had done his duty by helping the princess evacuate. The Emperor and Princess Erin were both grim, with the princess blaming herself. Suddenly, a loud monster cry echoed. They saw a dragon soaring in the sky, with Cyan clinging to its leg. Princess Erin couldn't believe her eyes. Cyan was holding on tightly, silently crying as he hung there. Dragons, noble creatures closest to the Creator, were rare and untouchable. Cyan Vert had considered it an honor to encounter such a being, but he wondered why it had to fly over the people he wanted to avoid. The dragon had flown over Erin, who had yelled Cyan's name. The Emperor was stunned by the dragon's appearance and questioned Williers about why his son was on top of it. Panicking, the Emperor asked if Williers wouldn't save him. Cyan cursed inwardly. He only wanted to drink the dragon's blood, not deal with this situation. Earlier, the evil dragon had told Kram she needed to eat it. But before Cyan, possessed by Kram, could act, a swarm of monsters had appeared. Frustrated, Cyan activated Rushing Fog Storm, slicing through several monsters simultaneously. Landing before the dragon, he remarked that it wasn't fully grown. The dragon opened its mouth, unleashing a powerful laser beam that shattered the ground. Unimpressed, Cyan told the dragon it was rude to spit in his face and invited it to take his sword. He slashed at its eye, drawing blood and enraging the dragon. Its violent movements blasted Cyan away, and it chased after him, but Cyan, still possessed, grinned. Ready with the 8 fluttering petal, he unleashed a massive explosion that shook the ground. He admitted he wasn't quite ready to fight a dragon yet, as his shoulders ached. He decided to wrap it up. The dragon flapped its wings, creating a gust of wind in front of Cyan. He told himself he wouldn't fall for the same trick twice, but noticed something strange. The dragon was scurrying away from him, leaving him shocked. He called it a cowardly lizard running away. Refusing to let it escape, he leaped high to chase it, which landed him in his current predicament. Now, he wondered if he'd used up all his luck meeting the dragon. Looking down, he pondered how to handle the situation. Kram noticed his hesitation and asked what was wrong since he wasn't doing anything. Cyan, irritated, asked if she couldn't see the people below. Kram shrugged, saying, "So what?" She argued that he needed to do something if he unsheathed her. Cyan shot back, asking if she was serious about using a demonic sword with everyone watching. He reminded her he'd be burned at the stake if they saw it. Kram countered, asking if he would stay on the dragon. He snapped, "I'm thinking." Willier stood with a magic circle beneath him, and Cyan panicked upon seeing the advanced 8-star magic. He realized his father was about to use the secret sword of heavens, knowing Cyan would be caught in it, too. Several golden swords shot toward the dragon. The dragon dodged, and Cyan cheered but saw one sword coming from the side that the dragon couldn't avoid. The dragon was struck, and Cyan fell, cursing his missed opportunity. Kram appeared, asking if he planned to act or kiss the ground. Cyan said using a mist spell would get him burned at the stake. Furious, Kram demanded to know if he was going to die. The deadpan Cyan replied he didn't know and would stop thinking until he sensed something. He told Kram there was a way. Horrified, Kram asked if he planned to fall into that filth-infested water. Cyan shrugged, "What other choice do I have?" Kram yelled no, and they went. A horned figure sensed a disturbance elsewhere and was surprised to see a devil dragon. The man behind him, also horned, said it was likely lost and in trouble. The silver-haired man remarked that strong demonic beasts were likely nearby, but the other man corrected him, saying humans lived there. The first man was shocked and silent, unable to believe a dragon could lose to humans. A red-haired man asked the silver-haired one if something bothered him. He replied that he had felt a strange yet familiar energy coming from that direction. The red-haired man suggested he check it out but warned him not to kill everything out of boredom. The silver-haired man's wings appeared, and he assured his companion he wouldn't cause trouble. Cyan emerged from the red water, bubbles rising as he groaned, exhausted and disgusted. My life, he muttered, then asked Kram if she was still alive. Annoyed, Kram snapped that she was deciding how to kill him. Cyan reassured her they would clean up once they returned and asked her not to be mad. Not impressed, Kram asked if he planned to return and reminded him they were in the demon realm. She assured him they wouldn't encounter a higher demon, but before she could finish, a voice interrupted. The voice agreed with Kram, claiming he knew something fun awaited them. Cyan's body went cold. He recognized the voice instantly. The demon called out to Cyan, a voice so deeply ingrained in his mind that he could never forget it. Cyan's expression darkened with fury. The demon asked if he was human. It had been none other than the Demon King, Valkyrian. Once described as the embodiment of evil, the Demon King stared at our MC. He struggled to maintain his gaze, knowing he could be killed instantly. Cursing, he wondered why it had to be now. The Demon King asked if Cyan was human and whether he would answer. Valkyrian glared, and the Demon King appeared behind him, offering to fight. Cyan tried to slash him but only cut a strand of hair, surprising the Demon King. Valkyrian chuckled, remarking that humans had infinite potential. He asked who the Demon King was, and Cyan replied, startling Kram. She questioned how they could defeat him in their current state. Cyan knew it was impossible and considered fleeing. The Demon King told him to relax, asking what Cyan could do to a kid like him. He casually laid back, saying he wouldn't fight children. Cyan made a confused expression at his behavior. Valkyrian asked again if he was human, and Cyan replied yes. The Demon King asked how he had arrived, and Cyan explained the water current. Sensing a strange aura from Cyan, the Demon King asked if this was his first time in the demon realm. Cyan, sweating, replied that he was just a normal human. The Demon King noted that Cyan seemed familiar, but Cyan insisted they had never met. The Demon King agreed, still puzzled about when Cyan could have seen him. Cyan asked why the Demon King was there. Noticing his relaxed demeanor, he wondered if this was the same Demon King he knew. The Demon King explained that he had felt a strange energy while making his rounds. Cyan asked about these rounds, and Valkyrian explained that, as Demon King, he oversaw the lands he ruled. He stopped mid-sentence, sitting down and asking Cyan what he had just said. Cyan repeated the explanation. Valkyrian then asked, puzzled, why Cyan wasn't shocked that he was the Demon King. That's when Cyan realized something. Cyan recognized him. Valkyrian asked if his mother had ever threatened him, saying the Demon King would take him away if he misbehaved. Cyan doubted this was the same Demon King he knew, as he had expected an invasion soon. But the Demon King in front of him didn't seem like someone who would start one. Cyan wondered what had triggered this change and asked Valkyrian what he wished to accomplish. The Demon King smiled, commenting on Cyan's boldness. He explained that he simply wanted his people to live well, but if anyone got in the way, he would kill them all. That was his duty. Cyan shuddered, realizing he had briefly felt the true monstrosity of Valkyrian that he remembered from his past life. Cyan realized that the Demon King's darker side had been repressed, but something must have released those chains. He knew he had to prevent that incident from happening. He asked the Demon King if he wanted to make a deal, warning him that something would soon threaten the people he ruled. Valkyrian, confused, asked what Cyan meant. Cyan explained that he didn't know the exact details, but a great war between humans and demons would be triggered. The Demon King stood up, agitated. He asked if Cyan meant that he, the Demon King, would want to take over their lands. Cyan replied that this was exactly why he wanted to negotiate. With a serious tone, Cyan told Valkyrian to promise he wouldn't start a war, no matter what happened. The Demon King disagreed but eventually agreed not to start a war. He asked what Cyan would give him in return. Cyan vowed, I'll help you, promising to do his best to aid him no matter what. The Demon King loomed over him, but Cyan held his ground, meeting his gaze. Valkyrian chuckled and asked for the kid's name. Cyan introduced himself as Cyan Vert. The Demon King then promised Cyan Vert that, as the ruler of the demon realm, he wouldn't invade the human lands, no matter what. With his wings spread, Valkyrian flew into the sky, reminding Cyan to keep his side of the bargain. After all, a deal is a deal. Cyan met the Demon King's gaze and nodded. The Demon King declared that their deal was sealed. Afterward, Cyan was found by the knights on the shore. They marveled at the miracle as he was conveniently lying there for the inspection team to see. He was soon dubbed the boy who survived the devil dragon. They returned to an abbey on the borders, which was being used as a military hospital. Cyan muttered, "Sorry." Princess Aaron was by his side, repeating her earlier words. In his mind, Cyan thought everything was resolved. Blushing, Princess Aaron asked, "Will you be mine?" Cyan, confused, casually declined, "Nah." His immediate response took aback Princess Aaron. She had almost cried, thinking he would decline because she was a powerless princess. Cyan, annoyed, thought her attitude was worse than her lack of power. He knew what was coming but couldn't stop thinking about how his worthless brother was somehow tied to her tragic end. Cyan replied, "You're right." He told her she had nothing to offer, no influence or etiquette, and that being close to her would be bad for him. But he said, he would watch her from afar until she improved. Aaron, surprised, asked for confirmation. He assured her not to be disappointed. Blushing, she vowed to become powerful enough that he couldn't ignore her. Cyan replied that he looked forward to it, noticing how quickly she cheered. Before leaving, Aaron thanked him for being alive, which made Cyan deadpan. A few days later, a man stood at the rear camp's outskirts, holding a glowing box and laughing silently. He muttered that there wasn't much left. Suddenly, a voice said, "So it's you, Reynold Crimson?" Reynold froze, feeling invisible chains bind him. The person, exuding an ominous aura, approached. Reynold held a small dimension box, which the person identified as a commercialized artifact that hadn't been released yet. It was a masterpiece of the Garum Kingdom's Mage Association, imbued with a dimensional realm and enough mana for infinite storage. The person asked if that was correct. This person had been watching Reynold for a year, suspecting someone within the Empire had been smuggling these boxes. Now, he understood the process. He took the box and identified Reynold as a 7-star mage knight from the Garum Kingdom. Reynold recognized the person, it was Cyan Vert. He asked why Cyan was there. Cyan emptied the box, revealing monster body parts. He told Reynold he assumed Reynold had extracted demonic blood and smuggled it across the border in supply carriages. Cyan also suspected a spy had helped Reynold with the supplies. Reynold denied knowing anything, but Cyan told him not to play dumb. Cyan knew the blood was already on the black market and wondered if Alice had gotten Hellhound blood through the same channel. He asked who had betrayed them, but either way, Reynold couldn't be allowed to live. Reynold, still partly immobilized, began using magic. He cast breath fire, warning Cyan to die. He claimed the consequence of letting his guard down was death, unleashing a massive flame. Reynold smirked, thinking Cyan was dead, and confirmed that the rumors about him were true. Reynold watched as his flames engulfed the spot where Cyan had stood. He sighed, upset about losing the dimension box. He hadn't expected this during transport. Suddenly, his hand was severed, blood pouring from the wound, and he saw a black fog. Cyan stood before him. Reynold thought it was mist, but Cyan grabbed his neck and offered him a choice: tell Cyan about the smuggling route and the spy, dying a quick, comfortable death, or face a tragic end so horrible that even Satan would pray for him. Hours later, people were unloading boxes at Valias's western border trading post. Two men eagerly examined the contents, glad they'd be able to take more this time. But when one man opened another box, they were shocked to find it contained Reynold's head. They wondered who could have done such a thing. A man in a robe observed the scene. It was Cyan. Kram asked if he wasn't going to deal with the men. Cyan replied that he'd leave them, assuming the warning had been sufficient. Reynold Crimson, the Garum Kingdom's 7-star mage knight, had been smuggling demonic beast blood from the front lines behind the Wuzif Empire's back. The blood was meant for the Garum Kingdom's Mage Association, where mages obsessed with surpassing humanity's limits gathered. The association studied the origin of magic and created powerful artifacts like the Dimension Box. They planned to use demonic beast blood for even darker purposes in the future, and Cyan knew he had to stop it. Kram remarked that she had thought Cyan only lived for himself but was puzzled by his selfless act. Cyan replied that he didn't like more people using demonic beast blood. Meanwhile, in the Wuzif Empire, Ishel gazed out the window. He received word that Cyan Vert had gone to the front lines with their father. A naked woman on his bed heard the name and recognized Cyan as Ishel's half-brother. Ishel, irritated, commented that Cyan was getting on his nerves and decided to see him. The scene shifted to where the 2 pieces of luggage had been placed. Emily celebrated being out of the front lines, excited about the academy. She commented that it would be nothing like that gloomy place, while S muttered that it was just the beginning of hell for him. Unlike Emily's expectations, the academy was filled with politics, envy, and schemes, where networking mattered more than education. Thrilled, Emily mentioned hearing about the handsome instructors and wondered if romance was finally in her future. This made Cyan wonder if she had come to the academy for him. A few hours later, Cyan's luggage was brought out, and as he walked around, he heard a loud gasp. It was Krantz, trembling at the sight of Cyan. Cyan was about to greet him, but Krantz quickly ran off, clearly still traumatized from their last battle. Kram asked who that idiot was, and Cyan explained that it was Krantz, her half-brother, adding that Cyan shouldn't mind him. Kram remarked that Cyan was the opposite of his family, but Cyan disagreed, thinking the absolute opposite was someone else. He opened the door and was greeted by polite servants. Surprised, he noted that the butler treated him with respect now as if his father or that bastard had been inside. He couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed over the past year, believing it was a reward for his hard work. As he turned the doorknob, his mood shifted. He recognized the aura that made him shudder and tightened his grip. He knew that beyond the door was that bastard. Ishel greeted him with a smile while C struggled to stay calm. Ishel asked if Cyan didn't remember him, but deep inside, Cyan's vision darkened. Ishel reminded him that their last encounter had been before Cyan had entered the academy. Cyan knew there was no way he could calm down at that moment. Slowly, he pulled out Kram, wanting to kill Ishel, but someone gripped his hand. It was Kram who urged him to get it together if he didn't want to die. She told him there was no fun in killing Ishel right now. That stopped Cyan. He closed his eyes, breathed, and politely greeted his older brother. Ishel replied that Cyan remembered him, to which Cyan responded that he could never forget his older brother's face. Ishel patted his head, smiling, and said he was glad Cyan hadn't forgotten him. He then mentioned hearing that Cyan's swordsmanship had improved and suggested he would soon be able to help their father. He quickly corrected himself, saying Cyan would be helping Cyan on the battlefield. With cold intent, Cyan replied that he was looking forward to it. Ishel observed him and said he was glad to hear that. He admitted he had come to see Cyan. Cyan knew Ishel only cared about those he deemed useful, so this visit was enough to help Cyan calm down. Cyan put on an act and told his brother he missed him too. Meanwhile, Emily complains that Cyan has no baggage and does not help her with hers. She stops to rest by a door, and when she opens it, she screams, expecting to find the young master who had left her. But instead, she is surprised to see the first young master, Ishel. He mentions hearing that Emily is close to Cyan and seems comfortable around him, then tells her to continue with her work and not worry about him. After Ishel left, Emily breathed and expressed that she had been nervous. She told Cyan he should have warned her that the first young master was there. Cyan asked her to leave him alone for a while. Emily was about to protest, but Cyan's intimidating tone stopped her. He told her not to make him repeat himself, and she grew worried. Cyan vomited in the restroom, breathing heavily. He asked Kram why she had stopped him, and Kram replied that he should thank her. She wanted his rage to grow, making him more delicious, which made Cyan smile, agreeing with Kram. A man approached the door, and Ishel called him in. The man reported tracking down the second young lady in the north, in the White Elves' territory. Ishel noted his sister's skill with people and asked to be updated when she was preparing to return. The man asked if something good had happened. Ishel seemed brighter than usual, but Ishel admitted he was in a terrible mood. The man apologized. Ishel recalled Cyan's murderous eyes, wondering if he had misunderstood. Cyan was getting on his nerves, and Ishel decided to keep an eye on him. The man reassured him that he'd assigned someone. Ishel stared out the window, still wondering what Cyan Vert was hiding. The day Cyan had to leave arrived. A carriage and several knights waited outside the mansion. Emily, fuming with anger, told Cyan she was disappointed in him. Cyan explained that it wasn't his fault he could only take a knight escort to the academy. Emily was upset because she couldn't accompany him. She complained that he should have informed her earlier. With nothing more to be done, Cyan said goodbye, advised her to behave, even if she was a little mad, and wished him the best. With a smug look, Cyan told the carriage to go, and it moved immediately. Emily, stunned, screamed for him not to feel down if he was bullied. She waved goodbye, telling him to take care of himself. Cyan thought that was very like her. He then remembered when he was 8 years old, sick with a fever and losing consciousness. No one had been there for him except Emily. She had carried him in the rain to the nearest doctor, screaming for help. An old man had opened his clinic and let them in. Emily had done everything to help him, and Cyan knew that if it hadn't been for her, he would have been found dead. To Cyan, Emily was one of the people he cherished most. He smiled at her and reminded her to act right, or she'd end up dead by his hand. Emily laughed, asking if she had missed his parting words. After the emotional farewell, Cyan sat back, satisfied. Cyan wondered why 6 intermediate knights had been needed to escort him to the academy and sighed, sensing trouble ahead. As the day passed, the carriage stopped, and a knight told him they'd camp for the night. Cyan asked where they were, and the knight said they were in Saffron, arriving in the morning. Cyan agreed but soon realized the knight had lied. There was no forest near Saffron, and the area was far from pleasant. What the knights were up to was clear. When Cyan stepped out, he noticed the knights surrounded him, swords drawn. He asked who was behind this, but they stayed silent, nervous. One knight, however, had smiled, which annoyed Cyan. With an intimidating look, he repeated the question. The knight grinned and said Cyan didn't need to know anything, he'd be dead soon. There were no personal feelings, just business. The knight pointed his sword at Cyan, advising him to stand still and close his eyes for a painless death. He rushed forward, swinging his sword and saying, "Goodbye." Just as the blade neared Cyan's neck, a head flew through the air. It wasn't Cyan's. The knights froze in shock. Holding his demonic sword, Cyan said, "I asked who's behind this." The remaining knights felt a shift in the air, fear. Cyan's red glowing eyes bore into them as he questioned why they weren't moving. One knight couldn't believe his eyes. The others charged at Cyan, but it was futile. One by one, they screamed in pain as Cyan pierced their bodies with ease. Cyan noticed one knight trying to flee. Without hesitation, he threw his demonic sword, hitting him dead center. The last knight, tears streaming down his face, stared at the bloodied corpses of his comrades. He couldn't understand how Cyan had been just an 11-year-old child. Cyan extended his hand, calling his sword back to him. The knight realized why Cyan had survived a dragon fight. With fear in his eyes, he knew this mission had been doomed. Tears flowed as he fell back, knowing what was coming. Cyan slowly approached, and the knight understood his fate. Cyan addressed the knight, demanding he reveal everything. The terrified knight quickly admitted that Mrs. Margaret had been behind it all. Disappointed by how easy the interrogation had been, Cyan watched as the knight trembled, unable to speak further. The next day, the carriage resumed its journey. The knight's life had been spared, and he continued providing Cyan with more information. Cyan relaxed atop the carriage, learning that Krantz had asked his mother for a favor. A dark aura radiated from Cyan as he realized it had been his worthless stepbrother. He promised to teach him a lesson when they crossed paths again. The knight, still nervous, asked Cyan what would happen to him now, tears welling in his eyes. He wondered if Cyan would kill him. Cyan noted he didn't seem sad about it, and the knight justified it by saying they had been the first to try to kill Cyan so that he couldn't resent him for retaliation. To ease the tension, Cyan casually told the knight to drive. He added that there was a difference between being useless and having no value in life, shocking the knight. Grateful, the knight thanked him. A few moments later, Cyan exclaimed, "We're finally here." Finally, he stood before the grand central city Saffron. Elsewhere, a vase shattered as a voice demanded an explanation. The trembling person was Mrs. Margaret, furious over the news. The butler had reported that one knight was missing, and the other 6 were dead. Cyan had left Saffron 10 days ago. Mrs. Margaret blamed the person in front of her and screamed, questioning how they had failed to dispose of a child. The butler quickly apologized, admitting they had underestimated the young master and sweating as he suggested someone else might have been involved. He begged for one more chance to finish the job at the academy. But Mrs. Margaret feared Cyan would harm Krantz if they proceeded. When angered, she remembered his menacing look and wanted her son to graduate safely. Turning away, she ordered the butler to do nothing but remind him to keep their conversation secret and eliminate anyone who knew. The butler left, unaware that someone had watched him from the hallway. 10 days after leaving Saffron, Cyan had been napping when Brian, the knight he had spared, had informed him that they had arrived at the Royal Academy. Cyan assumed Mrs. Margaret knew he was alive and safe but still needed to decide what to do with Brian. With a sigh, Cyan realized he was back at the academy. The carriage pulled up, and while the memories hadn't been good, the academy had changed him. Upon entering, Cyan showed his emblem and introduced himself as Cyan Vert of the Duke Vert family. The staff were stunned but quickly confirmed his registration and directed him to his dormitory. The entrance ceremony and elemental test were in 2 days. Cyan was surprised and received a room key with a letter, which confused him further. He asked if there had been a mistake. Brian then dropped the bags onto the floor, wide-eyed. Cyan's room was the royal hall, a luxurious space unlike any other dormitory. Cyan thought it odd, as no one in his family had received such treatment. Someone must have been behind it. He asked Brian if all the luggage had been delivered, and Brian nervously confirmed. With everything in place, Cyan reached into his coat pocket and told Brian his role was over. Brian panicked, fearing the worst, but Cyan pulled out a bag of gold coins. Brian dumbfounded and asked, "What's with the money?" Cyan kept walking, telling Brian it was his payment for the past few days. The money should be enough for Brian to start fresh, as returning to Vass could have meant his death. Brian was left speechless. Brian suddenly kneeled and asked Cyan's permission to serve him for life. Cyan, shocked to learn Brian was a knight, listened as Brian explained that he had been treated as a coachman and had been taught to serve someone he trusted. Cyan sighed, calling it foolish. Sensing Cyan's dark aura, Brian asked how he could trust Cyan wouldn't betray him. Brian quickly added that it didn't matter if Cyan took his life. Cyan tapped his shoulder, telling him never to think about betrayal, his way of accepting Brian as his knight. Cyan then announced they would skip the entrance ceremony and go straight to the elemental test. Brian remained stunned. Meanwhile, at the Royal Academy, Princess Erin took the elemental test, and her results were that mana ranked 2 stars, physical ranked B, and light element ranked 52%. Seth Shaharkin followed his results, mana ranked 3 stars, physical rank A, sand element 71%. An elderly man reviewing the tests noticed Cyan's results, mana ranked 1 star, physical rank S, and dark element at 92%. Instructor Sirika Nakriti noted that even Ellis Vert, who was praised as God's child, had only reached 88% in the water element by graduation. Dean Kundal Kusal, intrigued by this, reflected on how Ellis's talents had been surpassed by her younger brother, Cyan. Professor was concerned about Cyan's dark element, but the dean acknowledged his potential despite the risks. Dean Kundal then asked if Professor knew Cyan had been assigned to the Royal Hall. She confirmed, shocked to learn it had been by the Emperor's order. The dean explained that Cyan had saved the young princess from monsters, and the Emperor had even considered marriage. They pondered the implications, the 5th princess, once seen as a failure, marrying into the Vert family, known for raising talented individuals. Sirika warned that this could heighten succession conflicts and lead to a civil war. Dean Kundal stopped her from overthinking, suggesting they wait and see whether Cyan would become the Empire's hero or its downfall. Meanwhile, Cyan walked down the hallway, reflecting on how his dark affinity had reached 80% in his past life. He wondered if the demonic beast's blood had affected it before his attention shifted to someone ahead of him. Cyan greeted the 2 men in front of him. The blonde one, Krantz, panicked, clearly not expecting Cyan to be still alive. The chubby one beside him, Popper, reacted differently, asking Krantz if this was the kid he had treated like a slave. Krantz hesitated but confirmed it. Popper, the son of Marquis Fenelon from Garum Kingdom, mocked Cyan for not even knowing who his mother had been in his past life. These 2 had bullied Cyan in the past, but things would be different this time. Cyan saw it as his lucky day to run into these losers. Popper tapped Krantz's shoulder and suggested that Cyan needed a good beating. Krantz tried to stop him, but Cyan seemed to have a plan. Krantz, wanting to avoid confrontation, suggested they head to the cafeteria, but Popper kept walking toward Cyan. Suddenly, Cyan kicked Popper with such force that it shattered the wall. Cyan grinned devilishly, savoring the satisfaction of getting his revenge. Krantz could only cry out, "Fatso," as Popper was sent flying.